Good morning, everyone. Good to see everyone here. Today I would like to talk to you about our fourth UU principle, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, and how it has played a major part in my spiritual walk. A principle is kind of a rule that we set for ourselves to live by. This rule, along with our other UU principles, encompass values that we as a community hold dear. Without principles to live by, I'm afraid I would be lost. The title of my sermon is Religion a la carte. In other words, a religion in which I can choose anything from the menu. Being a UU affords me this option. Unlike other creedal religions, as Unitarian Universalists, we are able to explore all the faiths, all the traditions, and pick and choose from the ones that resonate with us. This would be considered a heresy to many other more orthodox religions, but is something I cherish. As with the word orthodontist or orthodontist, which means straight teeth, orthodox means straight thinking. Yet, as UUs, we are able to find our own theology and get out of the straight thinking that may have been forced on us in our youth by more traditional religions. As I look over my life so far, I can see my own personal path meandering this way and that. As a child of about 12, I remember coming home one evening after playing with my neighborhood friends and telling my parents that one of the boys said I would go to hell if I wasn't baptized. I told my parents this not because I was afraid of the idea, but because I felt it was quite absurd. And wouldn't you know it, a few weeks later, my parents took me, my sister Diane, and my brother Stephen to the local Lutheran church to be baptized. It seems that my parents interpreted my comment as an imperative to get the kids to church ASAP. It's kind of humorous looking back at it, but I'm glad they did. The Lutheran church in Chelmsford, Massachusetts was a wonderful place, and I took to it immediately. Back then, my parents didn't necessarily go to the church themselves, so I sat in the pews alone. And you know what? I was amazed to hear about this man, Jesus. The gospel readings were most attractive to me. I felt like I was there on an extended camping trip with Jesus and his disciples. One week, Jesus would be feeding the multitude with some bread and fish. Another week, he'd be in a boat addressing the crowd on the shore. I was attracted to the character because I could imagine myself there among his disciples. I felt safe and secure in this world. Jesus became to me a model of a down-to-earth man living in the here and now. He wasn't rushing about like most people. He had time to help people who had needs. He seemed unbothered by the chaos of the world around him. And I liked that. This was in strict contrast to the turmoil I experienced at home. My father was distant, not spending time with me or guiding me in any way. Unless my mother scolded him first, then he would reluctantly help me with something. I remember crying myself to sleep many nights as a young child, wondering where my father was. This was catastrophic to me and made me search for a male mentor. Jesus, on his extended camping trip, fit the bill. As for Jesus dying on the cross, I never considered his death as anything other than bad luck. That whole business about atonement for sin, I thought was an improper reading of the Gospels. As a teen, I had no concept of sin, although I'm sure I was full of shame because of how I was left to fend for myself emotionally at home. It was Jesus' attitude to life that attracted me. So my first impressions of Jesus was very positive. In 1980, I went off to attend Fitchburg State College and to study graphic design and communications. I had imagined that while at college I would meet wise professors and feel nurtured as I moved toward adulthood. I didn't find that at all. College seemed devoid of learned leaders. It was a school full of busyness. I was rushing from class to class, and the teachers seemed to be just reading from their notes, with a couple of exceptions. I was looking for wisdom. I was looking for mentors. I was looking for relationships. Then I found the InterVarsity Christian Fellowship, a small club on campus of evangelical students that met weekly for discussion, singing, and Bible study. Was this my new tribe? For a while it was. I remember one evening while attending a Bible study at the local Baptist church near the college, for that's where most of the InterVarsity students went, when I was given a well-worn Bible by a kind woman. And to my amazement, all the important stuff was underlined in highlighter. I was ecstatic. All the correct answers had been already located for me. So I thought. I would raise my hand when a question was asked in the Bible study and quickly found one of those underlined verses and proudly read it. Of course, I was mistaken. It would not be that easy. I realized I would have to understand this entire tome. Yikes. So I began to read the Bible. That's when disaster struck. Did you know the Bible is a frightening book? Well, it can be, and it was for me. I hadn't realized that there was so much conflict and threats of hellfire, archaic arguments in the letters of Paul in the New Testament, save for that chapter on love that we heard earlier. As a result, fear and anxiety became my friend, and depression soon followed. I became legalistic with everyone, including myself. I became a hopeless sinner. Yet still, instinctively, I realized that I had to fight this impression and decided to try to understand this Bible intimately. And through this battle, I hoped somehow I could wrangle out a path in which I could still keep my self-respect and find again the wonder that this book once had for me. What to do? Soon Alan Watts came to the rescue. Many of you might remember Alan Watts. He was an Englishman who gave lectures on radio and TV about Eastern religion during the 1960s and early 70s. His style was playful, and he could often laugh heartily. As he described it, he discovered in his youth that there was something strangely different about Eastern religion as compared to our Western Judeo-Christian faith. His grandfather was a missionary in the East, and on occasion Alan would receive strange gifts from the Orient that had a mesmerizing effect on him. There was something different about them, and Alan Watts needed to understand what they were. What presuppositions did the Eastern cultures have that Westerners didn't? That is what set him on his quest. I gobbled up his lectures. I bought his entire audio library on CD and would fall asleep to his lectures every night. His basic premise was this: we can't know our own culture until we look at it through the eyes of another culture. It's the contrast that teaches us about our own culture's presuppositions. So he dove into describing how Eastern philosophy sees the world, and this was fascinating to me. One interesting lecture by Alan Watts is called The Images of God. In it, he contrasts the three major religious ideas in the world: the ceramic, the dramatic, and the organic. Let me explain. He said in the Western view, with God creating Adam and Eve in a garden, treated creation as an artifact, something that was made. So I have a prop here. This is Plato. This is unrehearsed. This is Plato. Okay. So this is a ceramic image. Because it was made, matter had to be pushed around for something to happen. Like billiard balls on a pool table, some force had to be applied to hit another thing for something to happen. It was a ceramic model. It was made like the image of a lump of clay on a potter's wheel, fashioned by the hand of God. In this model, the creation is beholden to God. I'll come back to this one later. Now contrast that to the dramatic model, such as found in India. In this model, the world is acted. It is not made. We are all characters in a play. The God is sleeping, dreaming all creation into existence. The divine is dreaming you and me in a great drama. Can we snap out of our trance and realize this? And this universe goes through innumerable cycles when it exists and when it doesn't. Round and round, forever, in a great cosmic drama. That cycle is the breathing of the Brahman, as we heard about in our opening reading. In and out it goes his breath. And a big bang happens, then a big crunch, over and over again throughout eternity. And the third model is organic. That of the Orient and the Taoist philosophy. In this philosophy, things grow. All of life is an organic process, growing out from the smallest center, and surprisingly, with nothing lording over it. Each of us represents an organic process of growth, each with our own unique perspective. As an apple grows out from an apple tree, in this way the world is appling. Out of the three, ceramic, dramatic, organic, which seems to resonate most with you? Or maybe you never really ever thought of it in this way. I was finally beginning to get my bearings. I was learning enough about the world's philosophies that I could begin to craft one for myself. Would I add Buddhist elements to my faith? Would I keep the Christian ideas I learned as a child? What about earth-centered ideas of Native Americans or of Eastern Taoists? This all leads to a question. What is truth? For me, truth isn't preformed, unchanging set of principles or ideas living in some Platonic realm in the sky. You might remember that Plato believed that for every physical object, or even for things like virtue, love, or justice, there was a perfect version in the heavens. The best humans could do was to conform to these ideal forms. Knowing the truth was a matter of contemplation. Truth was preformed before the world began, and we should try to get in line with it. But for me, truth is more like how an arrow flies toward its target. True ideas are the ones that lead me toward my goals efficiently. True ideas can create healthy societies and happy people. True ideas must be discovered and practiced. True ideas evolve and are not set in stone. That's how William James talked about truth. In 1907, James was invited to lecture at Harvard University concerning his theories on truth. This was his lecture series called Pragmatism. His ideas were not new, but in the climate of religious fundamentalism, he ran up against scoffers and rejoinders who thought James was saying that truth was anything that we said it was, that there was no eternal truth that must be adhered to. Here I quote James from his lecture on pragmatism. True ideas are those that we can assimilate, validate, corroborate, and verify. False ideas are those we cannot. This definition of true ideas requires validation and verification. I read his lectures on pragmatism and related subjects over and over again until it really made an impact on my thinking. As a result, I could now let go of unprovable and unverifiable beliefs that were driving me mad. I was forming a religion for myself, made to order. UUs were sometimes criticized for being too liberal, too willing to accept any philosophy. This reminds me of a joke. What do you get when you cross a Unitarian Universalist with a Jehovah's Witness? Answer: someone who knocks on your door for no particular reason. But the Unitarian Universalist faith has been hundreds of years in the making and has gone through many iterations. I tend to gravitate toward the Universalist side of things, for the Unitarian side seems to deal with abstractions as to whether God is one or three in character, as opposed to Trinitarianism. The Universalist, on the other hand, deals more with where the rubber meets the road. Should we fear eternal damnation from a supposed loving God? Hosea Baloo, one of the founders of American Universalism, was born in nearby Richmond, New Hampshire in 1771. He did not believe in a future retribution from an angry God. In his day, Baloo was up against the Calvinists. Calvinists believed in the total depravity of human beings and original sin, as did many other Protestant sects. This was a false doctrine in Baloo's understanding. As the ceramic model suggests, God formed us out of dust of the earth. But did he form us as good? And did we become depraved through our eating of the forbidden fruit in the garden? Here is a famous quote by Hosea Baloo, which is worth reading in its entirety. Listen carefully, there's only like 2 sentences here. It is well known and will be acknowledged by every candid person that the human heart is capable of becoming soft or hard, kind or unkind, merciful or unmerciful by education and habit. On this principle, we contend that infernal torments which false religion has placed in the future world, and which ministers have, with overflowing zeal, so constantly held up to the people, and urged with all their learning and eloquence, have tended so to harden the hearts of the professors of this religion, that they have exercised toward their fellow creatures a spirit of enmity, which but too well corresponds with the relentless cruelty of their doctrine, and the wrath which they have imagined to exist in our Heavenly Father. That's sentence 2. By having such an example constantly before their eyes, they have become so transformed into its image that whenever they have had the power, they have actually executed a vengeance on men and women, which evinced that the cruelty of their doctrine had overcome the native kindness and compassion of the human heart. Now, this is preaching. It's amazing to me that as I began to struggle during my college years, my first thought was, who can I blame? One of my main beliefs had been that if my parents had only loved me more, I wouldn't need to have struggled so much. This must be the reason I was so lost and insecure. Little did I know that I was just needing to grow up and find my own autonomy and authority. Struggling with religion was my path forward. There's a visualization that I like to think about when I fall into a trap of believing that my past is creating my present, that past events can continue to influence me now. This meditation was from one of Alan Watts' lectures and goes as follows. Think of a big ship sailing on the ocean. Maybe you're on a Carnival cruise, all things included. You are standing on the back of it watching the wake fade off into the distance. The question is this: is the wake pushing the ship, or is the ship making the wake? It's the same with the present as compared to the past. If you say the wake is pushing the ship, then yes, your past is creating your present, and you are burdened by what has come before. But if you say no, the ship is creating the wake, then it is only the present that we have, and your past has no real power. That's the power of now. Alan Watts also said that if you want a better future, create a better now. So let's wrap things up. I'm happy to have the right to explore my own truths, discover what is important to me, and use whatever religious ideas or images from any culture to become my best self. I personally believe, like Hosea Baloo, that we are all saved by or saved before the foundation of the world. I believe we are part of the divine, the divine who has been splintered into countless pieces in order to make myriads of worlds. If we can realize our status as co-creators and that the ending has not yet been written, then I believe we can find the courage to let our arrows of truth fly toward their targets and find healing from our sorrows with newfound courage. For the word sin, as used in the New Testament, has its origin in the art of archery. It means simply to miss the mark or the bullseye. In one of my favorite gospel stories, Jesus healed a madman who lived amongst the tombstones. And the story reports, after his encounter with Jesus, the man was found sitting in his right mind. I would like to be found just sitting in my right mind. That is all I really want, for my right mind is lovely. I hope you enjoyed my sermon called Religion à la carte. As you use, we are privileged in our ability to craft a working philosophy of life with a free and responsible search for truth and meaning. Now let us sing hymn 346. Come sing a song with me. Join in as you are able.